Hey everyone, welcome back to Plain Speak, where we pick the brains of industry experts for a 30-minute chat on the intersections of technology and customer support. Today, as we are fully into Q4, it's crazy how close to the end of the year we are, the epicenter of DTC brands' business calendars. We are thrilled to have Devlin O'Niel, a CX expert formerly at Lululemon, Chime, and Etsy, joining us today for a discussion on Jolly Good CX tech for customers online and IRL. So Devlin, congrats on not being super busy this Q4, hopefully, but he's bringing a wealth of experience from his career in technology and customer experience. Starting out as a systems administrator and progressing into IT project management, Devlin has a really unique tech-focused approach to CX. His work includes significant projects like CRM upgrades, as well as managing platforms for really large-scale operations. At Lululemon, he contributed to scaling the customer support operations from 40 to 1,000 agents, focusing on maintaining high-quality interactions and aligning with the company's unique brand values. His journey has also taken him to Chime Financial in San Francisco, where he played a pivotal role in preparing the company for going public, focusing on things like security and compliance in a fintech environment. Most recently at Etsy, Devlin navigated the unique challenges of a marketplace platform, focusing on resolutions between buyers and sellers and ensuring trust and safety within the community. His approach to customer support has really evolved over time, emphasizing the importance of problem solving and leveraging technology, especially today when it's changing so quickly to meet customer needs effectively. So for those of you joining us for the first time at Plain Speak, I'm Liz Tai, CEO and founder of Hi Operator. Hi Operator is the leading customer support solution that scales dynamically based on a company's evolving needs. Our proprietary customer support tools leverage NLP, workflow automation, and generative AI to tackle even the most complex customer requests. Our products include an auto data tagging tool, Highlight AI, as well as Hi Auto, our fully automated CS solution. One super quick last housekeeping note, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them into the chat wherever you're watching this down below. If we don't get to them during the session, we will reach out afterwards and or post answers on LinkedIn. Now, I'm excited to get going. Please welcome Devlin. How's it going, Devlin?
Thanks for having me, Liz. This was wonderful. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
No, I'm super excited to dive into all of your different experiences. Maybe to kick off, at Lululemon, a brand that I know a lot of us are familiar with as consumers, they're very seasonal. There's a lot of scaling. Talk to us a little bit about how they manage their culture and maintain that internally while having to scale customer support operations up and down.
Yeah, Lululemon was just a fantastic company to work for, and as you were reading my bio, I was like, wow, what an amazing career I've had, and gosh,
Yeah.
I wonder what's next. But yeah, thanks. Like as I was mentioning, Lululemon had a truly amazing workplace and culture. Their support center was a really interesting place as the growth of the digital business grew. Our support needs grew as well. And we had a really unique approach to kind of scaling the operation. Lululemon really favored the idea of working with internal, hires, direct hires. They didn't outsource any of their customer support operation, and really kind of look to the opportunity to kind of maintain the quality and the voice and the overall brand kind of consciousness, through internal resources. So that was quite easy to do while the company was at 40 agents, even to 100 agents, couple hundred agents. But as we really kind of grew and scaled globally, it really became a challenge to kind of find different languages, to find different, centers to kind of operate in. So, my best experience too is going through the COVID pandemic with that brand too. The online experience just jumped, and that was a real challenge for us to scale and continue to operate with internal resources that way.
Absolutely, because you have the challenge of just that raw scale and then also moving that, IRL shopping experience. I remember in college, I went to school in Boston, there was the Lululemon, on Boylston, and you could go and take yoga classes, and there was so much community around that, right? Um, and you said something interesting here, which is that they really believed in not outsourcing, it sounds like, right? Really working with internal teams and growing that to maintain culture. As you've worked across these different brands, you've probably experienced a variety of internal teams, outsourced teams, and mixing them. Tell me a little bit about that from maybe a technology implementation perspective. What are the different incentives when you've got in-house outsourced teams, different considerations and challenges?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Funny, ironically enough, my experience going from Lululemon, my next opportunity was with a Chime Financial, and we use 100% outsourced resources. So I completely had to flip the mindset from like internal resources and agents to like outsourced agents and teams. We had 9 different BPO partners during my time at Chime. So we really kind of cycled through different partners, used a lot of our systems and tools, specifically to like the approach that we've had, or the companies I've worked for, we've had the approach around like providing our tools to the partners that we've been working with, or to our agents, and kind of managing the tools ourselves. And I think we've had various reasons for doing that. I think that kind of comes from traditional like mentality of like, we want to own our data, we want to kind of protect that, we want to have the ability to kind of manage it and secure it, and these are our customers. But I think, kind of moving to cloud platforms really kind of opened up that kind of mindset a little bit. And I think kind of furthermore, the idea of kind of leveraging partner solutions as well is something that we've really warmed up to. Some organizations it fits maybe better than others. I think, my time with Chime, we were very conscious of security and protection of our customer data. So that wasn't maybe the best opportunity, but I do think, the expertise and kind of scaling those solutions really kind of favors outsourcing in many ways as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, when it comes to, success, and I know we're talking about this a little yesterday, success in technology implementations, right? Yes, it's partially you've got to choose the right software, but then, especially in an environment when you've got, gosh, 9 different vendors, thousands of agents, how do you think about that rollout, right? I mean, there's implementation, there's getting a set up, but then how do you get 9 BPOs to all do the same thing?
And I think the partners that I've worked with too have been very accepting of kind of our technology decisions. Hey, we'll work with you, but I think what's I found interesting working with different partners is just the level of expertise. I mean, they've seen all the different tools, they've kind of touched everything, they kind of know what works, what doesn't. So I've actually found the expertise working with peers on the technology teams with our partners, like really a great learning experience for me too, because I get a better perspective of what our agents are doing. How those things kind of affect their day to day, and just kind of how to maybe optimize the tooling. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of mix. I've been a bit protectionist about my role and kind of the benefit that I add to a company versus like outsourcing our tools and systems. But again, I think there's a really interesting opportunity to kind of mix those together.
Definitely, because there are actually a couple layers to that now that you mentioned, right? There's, a technology implementation rolling across different vendors. But then there's also, I think in today's world, right, especially with generative AI, what people are really excited about leveraging in the CX world. And then you do have a lot of companies that are digitally native, right? They are at their core and their DNA tech companies. And when it comes to leveraging, the coolest and best of generative AI, how have you maybe thought a little bit about what should a company build versus buy versus manage when it comes to the latest generation of CX tools?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time trying to answer that problem over the last year as we've kind of seen, generative AI solutions really burst on the market and kind of, really focus a lot of their capabilities around contact center space and customer service. So, quite honestly, we've seen, working with a tech company like Etsy, we had a lot of really talented engineering teams that could build software, and they were also excited about the opportunities to kind of play with these new tools and kind of exercise what they were doing. Uh, I think, having some really great conversations with internal teams, though, we kind of really realized, though, too, like if we were to get started even in July or October of this year, we're already about 10 months behind, some of the other teams that have already been focusing on this as their core business for maybe the last 2 years. So Yeah, sure, we could pull together a team of engineers, we could dedicate our resources, but really, how much advantageous is that going to make to our core product and our core brand? Or is it going to divert our resources away from those core offerings, if that makes sense? Um,
Yeah,
so so yeah, I think initially there was a lot of excitement. Engineering teams were really like wanted to kind of grab onto the tools, but I think once you kind of had further conversations, there was a acceptance that, hey, again, maybe we don't need to build this ourselves, which it kind of came down to a buy versus build conversation a lot of times.
yeah, definitely. I mean, every company is still engineering resource constrained, right? So it's really where do you put that? Is it towards a support and maximizing function, or is it towards more of a revenue first function? I think what I've been struck by as we've spoken to CX teams across different brands is what you said, which is for the very first time, engineers and the rest of the org, they're excited to work on customer
Yeah,
support tooling. That has never happened. There's never been an
totally.
engineering team at a consumer-facing organization that's come and been like, yes, I would like to rebuild your ticketing system, or I would like to build integrations for customer support, right? But generative AI, I think, is the one thing where engineering teams are actually really excited about trying to get their hands dirty a bit.
And I think it was interesting, and as you were kind of sharing that, I was kind of thinking back to the last few years with some of the chatbot technologies, even some of the more advanced IVR kind of voice capabilities that have kind of emerged. I've worked with some really good engineering teams or product teams that have enjoyed kind of working on the tooling. I think where sometimes the expertise finds some limits, though, is when you talk about how the systems really integrate and kind of connect to one another. I remember having some really kind of good conversations about workforce management and saying, hey, like we need to be able to kind of forecast and kind of report on, the ability for our volume to kind of come in. How do we do that, with these like homegrown tools and systems? And like there was just like no insight into how that kind of impacted our operation. Same thing with analytics and reporting, just thinking about the downstream, like, hey, we want to be able to report on this. These are important metrics for our business. Um, again, not necessarily thinking about the building out of the analytics capabilities at the end of it. It's always like the customer front end, but again, there's got to be a reporting end to it as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, that's such a good point because I think when people think about customer support, right, I think about the last touch point, right, where what everything the customer support org has done, where that actually meets the customer in the form of an interaction. But when you think about tooling and platforms and implementation, all of that is sort of the stuff that's like below the surface, sort of like the iceberg that's below the water, right? The customer doesn't see it, really shouldn't see it to some extent, but that's how you actually run a really stellar customer experience organization that then delivers the experience that your customer actually wants to see.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Right. And that's all stuff on the back end. Now, from your position as someone who's done a lot of the technology implementation and evaluation and platforming, tell me about how the role of AI and chatbots have kind of evolved in customer support over your career. Because it does sort of feel like, right? We were talking about how every 5 years there's a new chatbot revolution. There's IVR, the chatbots we had in 2017, the generative AI versions now, which does feel like the real thing. But tell me a little bit about that evolution and adoption each time.
Yeah, I've been kind of at the forefront of some of those because working at Lululemon, we had over 60% of our inbound volume was coming over live channels or chat specifically. So the that was kind of seen as like an early, every time we shared that metric with peers, they were always like, wow, that's crazy, like so many, but it really kind of spoke to who our customers were and how they preferred to kind of contact us as a brand. So offering kind of advanced chat capabilities was something we were really focused on over the 5 or 6 years that I was there. Chatbots really kind of came in as really interesting opportunity. I know like we struggled with the idea of like putting automation or bots in front of our customers, and we were really kind of concerned with the language and the voice. So I think we didn't like move very quickly with those capabilities. But again, just before the pandemic, ironically, we kind of invested in some tools that allowed us to do some automation specifically for things like where's my order or processing returns, which are very drive a lot of the seasonal volume that those types of brands kind of take during the year. And they were really great applications for those things. Where's my order? Where's my order? Very repeatable, very, very explainable, and very easy to architect as well. So thankfully that was kind of the initiation process with chatbots and capabilities. But really the last year has kind of taken it to the next level. I think generative capabilities have really kind of introduced a new way of having conversations with brands and voices. And I've been really impressed with some of the new tools that I've seen in the market and how they can apply it. And then just thinking about how this would have solved our use cases 4 or 5 years ago, it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this whole, I think, ability to leverage all of, well, some of the generative AI components, but also just some of the orchestration components across different systems that are much better interconnected today than they were 6, 7 years ago to really produce sort of a customization at scale type experience. Right. Because you've worked at brands where the brand voice matters a lot, right? Lululemon, we're all familiar with that. But then even a platform like Etsy, right? When you think about customer segmentation, it's a marketplace. People can list a whole variety of things, right? They can be buying a 25-cent sticker or a $10,000 piece of personalized art, right? From a practical perspective and a tools perspective, how did y'all think about that at Etsy?
The idea of personalization was probably something that wasn't thought about 2 or 3 years ago. But again, as the companies kind of scaled and as their operations kind of grew, they realized that, again, like we have different levels of customers here. We do have buyers, we do have sellers, but even within that community, there's regional buyers and there's regional sellers. And how do we offer different levels of support to different areas of the world? And then, as you kind of mentioned, there's customers that have kind of low touch support needs, and then there's other customers that may have very high touch or sellers that have high touch needs. So, how do they really how do they offer different levels of support as needed or as appropriate was a really interesting kind of problem that we had. One of the projects that we worked on over the last year was actually to upgrade the live chat platform that we were working on, because what Etsy had been leveraging really didn't offer a lot of flexibility in terms of segmentation. It was hey, here's a chat, come in, let's have the conversation and let's exit. But by upgrading our tool to a more modern chat platform, we did allow for a lot more like intake of variables that allowed us to kind of segment our customers and offer different levels of support depending on needed. So I'm sure that provided a lot of support for the team during the holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. Because so much of it is really getting the right expertise and the right help to the customer or seller at the right point, right? Because, gosh, when we think about the different brands you've worked at, it really is very different consumer bases, right? I mean, something like a Chime. A Chime is a mobile banking app, right? There are no in-person branches. If you are using Chime, you are a digitally native citizen, right? You are comfortable on that channel. Lululemon, I'm guessing, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, is a mix of both, right? You can go walk in, so you get the entire demographic of people who shop at malls and people who shop online. But then Etsy, Etsy shoppers are obviously shopping online, but I'm guessing Etsy might also support a pretty big crafting community that might have a broader range of needs and preferences.
Yeah, I think if you think about the seller community on Etsy, these are people that are, their expertise is in, making other things, not necessarily software, and not making tools or systems or platforms. So I think Etsy did an amazing job at creating information and really an easy to use platform for people that weren't tech savvy or maybe tech experts to kind of onboard, create a shop, create the payment gateways, do advertising, have support along the journey to kind of make that shop successful. So again, that's kind of their secret sauce as a business, though, really enabling that. And I think a lot of attention was paid toward that seller experience. As much as you think it's like a buyer driven community, it's really like our customer support was really majority supporting our seller community.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense because it's opening up a whole new channel where you would normally have gone to your crafting show or a fair, and you're opening an entirely new channel for them. Which, I think actually goes to sort of the question of, based on your experience at all of these different companies, what thoughts or advice do you have for brands who are looking to meet customers where they are with the digital mobile experience, right? We had in person, we had a lot of web, browser, laptop centric stuff. Now there's a lot of mobile centric. How do you think about that with different brands?
I think, and this is almost one of the harder things to do too, but really offering flexible support so that you can offer your support to a lot of different customers. And I think, feel free to experiment as a company too with different ways of doing that. I think the concept of like A/B testing and kind of segmentation testing is really important for brands to get feedback on what their customers are kind of looking for, what works for them, and really kind of gauge, are we doing the right things as a support organization to kind of help you out? So I think it really, we a lot of companies kind of have these voice of customer programs and kind of listening to your metrics and your key, but do interviews with your customers, do interviews with your agents, kind of find out what your customers are saying through their perspective. I think it's really important to kind of listen across the board to, as you're kind of thinking about new initiatives on really what might land for your customers.
Definitely. No, it's really interesting how there are all those different stakeholders, right? When you think about whatever change you're making, whether it's policy, process, technology, any of that, you have the company, right? You have business goals, you have what the customer wants and needs, and then you also have really your agents, right, and your CS team, right? And we're big believers in you really have to align all three of those to have a successful initiative. As you think about the different brands you've worked at, how did they think about balancing those, and sort of what role did the CS teams play in driving those decisions?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think I've seen, kind of run the gamut of different levels of inputs from our CS agents. I'll maybe start at Lululemon. Because they were in-house agents, we had what we called our agent board of directors. So there was like a monthly panel that we, select agents that were kind of promoted to this agent board of directors, and we would meet with them regularly. We would conduct interviews and panels, and we would ensure that things that they were suggesting, we were held accountable to kind of delivering or kind of making happen for them. So could be everything from like, hey, we want hot coffee in the break room, to like, hey, we want yoga classes, because we did yoga classes for our agents.
Yeah,
We had a yoga room on our floor that there was actually yoga. So there was really great incentives for our agents to be part of that. So, but trust me, as someone that's provided tooling, we did hear it a lot for agents. We want better tools. We need to be able to help our customers better. That was unanimous, regardless of the company I've worked for. But again, using different brands have worked in different ways with feedback from our customers. Obviously, at Chime, we used a lot of partners. We had a lot of feedback coming back from them, and similarly at Etsy with Partner Network. But that was a really great experience. That as me providing tools and systems to actually connect with the agents directly and kind of hear their pain points.
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I think people who build customer support tools have that's really cool, which is that you actually know all of your users, right? You actually can go and just sit by agents and really figure out what's happening there. Um, what you bring up you just mentioned something earlier, which is sort of A/B testing, right? That I think is one interesting, but two, one of the things that I'm really excited about as we move to a more digital CX experience, right? And I think we saw marketing sort of go through this transformation, but I think customer experience is really going through it now as well, which is, when things are all very manual, it's actually really hard to A/B test things like policies and processes, right? But as you bring more levels of automation, generally behind the scenes before the actual interaction, it becomes actually very easy to start to track, and we call it instrument, right, across different policies and actually drive results in the world of customer support the same way that marketing has been able to do for 5-10 years.
Yeah, I agree. When things are manual, you have to kind of train a group of agents on a policy. Yeah, it can be hard to kind of introduce that capability. But I think through the benefits of, like I said, tooling plus kind of segmentation, you kind of do have opportunities to kind of test things out. I'll give an example. At Lululemon, we operated a few different contact centers across the globe, And we often kind of ran experiments in some of our smaller markets before we actually kind of deployed within North America. And that's
Yeah.
not to say that they were less important. It's just, again, they were kind of smaller use cases. We could actually kind of test out systems and tools in those places. And quite often they were the first ones to be like, hey, if you get anything new, like we'd love to do it. We had a team in Korea, for example, that were very innovative. They wanted to really provide different, and quite honestly, the support experience was different there. The customer needs and demands were for different channels that we weren't even aware of as a tech team. So yeah, it was really kind of a fun experience to learn and grow with.
Fascinating. Yeah, use those sort of your sort of experimental testing grounds because I mean, honestly, it's just hard to retrain 1,000 agents, right?
Yeah,
To sort
yeah.
of bring it to the main bit. That is so fascinating. I don't think we'll have time to cover this because the other thought there, though, is that
Maybe there's a part two in the new year. I don't know.
there might be a part two because support is often really localized. And I think people are excited about generative AI being able to help bridge the language divide, right? Automated translation is so much better today, but it's a lot more than just language. This might be a future topic, but
Yeah,
yeah.
localization is a future topic for sure. We've definitely, I could share some stories for that for sure.
More to come.
More to
But
come.
I know we are getting close to the end of lunch. So maybe let's, any last thoughts you might have for CX teams as you think about the new tools and, generative AI and all of that?
Oh my gosh, be excited. I think like what an amazing time to kind of be in this space. I think as what I've been fascinated with is like as much as the world is kind of a buzz with generative AI, there's a lot of real practical use cases in the customer support space. And I think we really benefit in a lot of ways to be able like early adopters to these new tools and see the benefits right away. And I think that's a really benefit to our customers as well.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a customer or a customer support leader.
Yeah.
Um, so every week we do a rolling question. Devlin, yours is coming from Spencer Woodard, the head of CX at Nisolo Shoes, which is, what's your holiday tradition? What did you do for Thanksgiving?
Well, actually, this is a great question. So I'll confess, I'm a Canadian citizen. I've lived in Vancouver, San Francisco. I'm a U.S. permanent resident as well. But I actually get to celebrate Thanksgiving twice. So in Canada, we celebrate in October. In the U.S., there's the U.S. Thanksgiving. So I actually love cooking. So I've made 2 turkeys this year already, and I can't wait to like enjoy that meal twice a year. So like, why only do it once a year when you can do it twice?
Okay, what's your favorite way to make a turkey, though?
I'm traditional. I like putting it in the oven, and I've seen the deep fryer thing. Like that
Yeah.
fascinates me, but that was just something that maybe living in cold Canada we didn't have access to. But I'm fascinated to try it someday.
All right. Yeah, we did smoked this year, but fried is on
Oh,
the to-do list. Um,
interesting. Yeah.
and then yeah. And then for our guest next week, it's gonna be Brian, the CEO at Flip CX. What question would you like to ask Brian?
Well, we had a question that was always like an icebreaker at Lululemon. It was always like, "Hey, what's your favorite way to sweat?" Or like, what's your, another way to kind of ask that would be like, "What's your favorite way to like decompress? How do you kind of get away from it all and like reground and recenter so that you can be your full self for your next activity?" But yeah, that's and my favorite way to sweat has been like hot yoga over the years. Couldn't put me in a sauna, let me do some stretching, and just make me feel great afterwards.
Well, that's awesome. Got to keep it active. Well, Devlin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And huge thanks to everyone else who tuned in to spend your lunch hour with us. If you have any customer support questions, please reach out. And please do come join us for another retail edition of Plain Speak on Wednesday, December 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern, where we will be dialing into the future with Brian Schiff, founder and CEO at Flip CX, a company that's bringing powerful automation to customer support phone calls. Devlin, thank you so much. Everyone else, have a great rest of your week.